For this week's classic interview, I thought we would talk about money in politics and money in media and go back to our December 1st, 2011 interview with Buddy Roemer, the former governor of Louisiana, who is actually really now a Republican. He was a Democrat at one point, and he really is interested in getting money out of politics. We talked about how we want to stay independent. We had our big announcement a week ago about moving the program to Boston and raising money and all of this stuff. Buddy Roemer actually has a group that has invested in the Young Turks, and he's really putting his money where his mouth is with regard to getting money out of politics and funding independent media. And it was such a great interview that we had with Buddy Roemer that I thought, what better time than now to go back to December 1st of 2011. We've been talking about money in politics for a long time, even with Republicans, as this interview is going to illustrate. Let's check it out. Buddy Roemer was the 52nd governor of Louisiana from 1988 to 1992. He's also running for the Republican presidential nomination. He was elected as a Democrat, but switched to the Republican Party in March of 1991. Governor, why'd you switch? I'm getting so many questions from my audience, and at the top of the list is, why did you switch parties?
Two reasons. One was that in the 1980s, I seemed to be much more aligned with the interest of the Republican parties, or at least the interest that they talked about. Abraham Lincoln kind of things in terms of civil liberties, smaller government, more individual liberty and responsibility. I like that. Teddy Roosevelt idea that competition should be fair. Republicans at the time were much different from the Democrats, who got funded by the big corporations. The Republicans didn't then. Education works best when it's run locally, with the school board kind of overlooking the agencies rather than the federal government doing. I like that. So while I was in Congress, I was a Democrat, but a conservative one, and there was no room in my party for me.
Well, why do you consider yourself, I mean, now your signature issue really seems to be funding of elections, funding of candidates. And really, I mean, when we look at American politics right now, your point of view seems very, very similar to Dennis Kucinich. That's the one person I find where you do really seem to agree. What issues do you still find yourself to really be in agreement with today's Republican Party on?
All right, let me hit that, but let me finish you asked me a really good question. Why did I change? Because no governor in American history, before or since, has changed parties while in office. So it was a big decision for me. Now remember, I'm fighting corruption. Louisiana had 12% unemployment, low-paid teachers, worse-rated bonds. Our kids were leaving the state. Corruption, corruption, corruption. So first I ran for office with a $100 limit, no PAC money, free to lead, and I won. I beat the establishment. And so I wanted to finish the job, and the way to do that was to establish a second party. I switched to a Republican, and we established a second party. I'm very proud of that. You need two parties. Now, back to your question today. Who I'm closest to? Really, none of them. Both parties are corrupt. David, you know that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have a president who ran on hope and change. My God, the two things he hasn't delivered on is hope and change. You know why? He doesn't have time. He's out raising $1 billion to run for re-election. Where was his first fundraiser? Wall Street, $35,000 a ticket. You know who the sponsor was? Goldman Sachs. So I'm not proud of the Republican Party, but I'm damn sure not proud of the Democratic Party. They're in a race for corruption. I will stand in this campaign and will be elected if I can ever reach the national stage, because my position is where the American people is. I want a president free to lead. I want a president who will do the right thing. I want a president who will grow jobs, not grow the size of government.
Yeah, so how come you're not in the Republican debates, in the national Republican debates? I mean, I also spoke with Fred Karger, who also is not participating in those debates. He wants to be participating. Is it because it's based on poll numbers, national poll numbers? Why aren't you in there?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer. I've been running for 10 months. And Fred has his own issues. That's not my issue. But my issue affects everything that can be done in Washington. It's why Obama has been a poor president. He's a good man, but he can't get anything done. You know why? The big checks on it. David, the president has no power. He's given it up for re-election. You know who has the power? Goldman Sachs.
No question about it.
GE.
I mean, you know I agree with you on that.
I mean, this is the issue, though, David. Don't confuse it with anything else. And all a debate is a forum to get the issue out there. And the reason they keep me out of it is they don't want to talk about the issue because they're addicted to the money.
Would you run alongside Ron Paul? If asked, would you be Ron Paul's running mate? That's a question I'm getting from a lot of Ron Paul supporters.
Yeah, I like Ron Paul. I like him a lot. I'm different of him on many key issues. I think there is a role for government. He would eliminate it. I think health reform needs to happen. I think we need fair trade with foreign countries. It's unfair now, but I like Ron Paul's character. I like his issue of the central bank. We ought to do away with Humphrey Hawkins and keep it on one issue of currency. I told Ron that I would, if elected president, have an immediate audit of the Federal Reserve. He loved it. He started using it in his speeches. Ron and I served in Congress together 30 years ago. We're close. We don't see eye to eye on everything, but the two of us would make one hell of a change in America.
And would you run alongside a Democrat on a mixed ticket?
Absolutely. I look, we need change. We need to throw corruption out. I'm a broom. That's all I am. I'm not interested in being a lifelong politician. I've been out of politics for 20 years, and I've been happy as hell, David. You know that. I've grown a $1 billion bank, no bailout money. I've been very successful. I'm a happy man, but I'm afraid about what's happening in America. I think this is a country in decline, and I will go anywhere and meet with anybody and team with anybody, no matter what party they're in. Let me tell you what the test is. Do you put America first? Do you put America first?
What about Jesse Ventura? Would you run with Jesse Ventura?
Say it again?
Jesse Ventura. Would you run with Jesse Ventura, former Minnesota governor, third party guy?
I don't know enough about him. And notice I have not tried to name names.
Right.
You mentioned Ron Paul. I do know Ron, and I would welcome an alliance there. But let me go further.
Okay.
I think it needs to be vetted very carefully. I think putting a central ticket together outside of both parties, having an independent or a Democrat to join with me, I would be very interested in that.
Tell me, why do you think Herman Cain, who has zero experience in governing and politics, is seen as more of a legitimate candidate than you, a former governor?
He's not seen as more of a legitimate candidate. He's just better known. He was in all the debates, man. I mean, you get it? I mean, if you're not in the debate, you're unknown. How can you compare a known to an unknown?
No, let me rephrase. No,
David, let me have 5 debates talking about jobs and corruption, and then we'll see who the most popular candidate is. It won't be Herman Cain.
Okay, so let me rephrase then, because I've said from the start Herman Cain doesn't actually have a real chance at being the Republican nominee.
That's correct.
He may have at the very most he has 2 weeks left in this campaign before he'll be forced out. Right. But my question is, why have things aligned themselves in such a way where Herman Cain has become so much more well known and more popular in the polls than you have?
He's been in the debates, David. You keep asking a circular question. Look, this is the 21st century, David.
Yeah.
Quit running 4 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Debates were not that important then. They're everything now. Most Americans don't give a damn. They're worried about their job and their family. The election's a year away. This is an inside ball game. What you do on the debates is get known. They check your credibility. They see how you answer under pressure. They see how you answer when you get a surprise question. They see how you answer when another candidate attacks you. A debate is a wonderful thing. It's 2 hours every week. It's 20 hours. It's 24 hours. I have none of that. In the last poll in Florida, statewide, run by a professional firm, I stood sixth in the race with four guys below me, all of who'd been in the debate. I have not been in a single one. Let me get on the debate. And one of two things are going to happen, David. Either I'll shut up and do nothing, or we'll be the next president of the United States.
Well, there's more options than just those two, I think.
You keep asking. I mean, I don't know why you do it. You need to think about it. You keep asking the same question. Well, buddy, why aren't you better known? Why aren't you higher in the polls? Well, let me give you the answer. I haven't been on a single debate.
But why not is the question. Why haven't you been in those debates?
First, the requirement was that you be a formal candidate for president. In the first three national debates, I was not. So I didn't worry about it. When I announced in August, I inquired as to what the requirements are. Since I was the only candidate who was a congressman and a governor. And they said, well, you had to have 1% polls. Well, I hadn't been in politics in 20 years, so I said, well, I've got some work to do. I made 1%. That was 3 more debates that I missed. So I called again, and I was told you had to have 2%. So I worked again, and I made 2%. That's where I am in the national polls. And then the last 3 debates, they had a different requirement. You had to raise $500,000 in the 90 days prior to the debate. Well, I don't take PAC money. I don't have a super PAC. I have a $100 limit. I've raised $256,000, average contribution $60, but that's only half of what they wanted me to raise. Why is that a requirement? And I asked them. I said, why is that a requirement? And here's what they told me. We got to find ways to keep some people out. Wow. That's how we pick a president?
That's definitely a sad commentary. The one way that I can guarantee you'd get right into the national spotlight is if you have an extramarital affair. That seems to really get people interested. You'll be in all the debates then, wouldn't you?
You're being so unfair to Herman.
Hey, last question.
Well, by the way, I'm a divorced man. So I guess when I get to the top, my marriage will be looked at. That's fine with me. But I've been lucky and pretty good for a boy.
Hey, if you are not if you happen to not be the Republican nominee, will you support whoever does come out of this Republican field, or might you look to a third party or to a Democrat?
I'll support the best person for president. We'll see who that is. I'm hoping that's a Republican. But it will be somebody who endorses campaign reform as the key to turning America around and growing jobs. It's just that simple. And I've not heard a single candidate, Democrat or Republican, mention campaign reform and be telling the truth.
Absolutely. Neither have I. We've been speaking with the 52nd governor of Louisiana and current Republican presidential candidate, Buddy Roemer. Really a pleasure to speak with you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, David. Good job, man.